Hi everybody, this is Heather with the Eastern Panhandle Conservation District. We cover Jefferson, Berkeley, and Morgan counties in West Virginia. And today's lesson is going to be on pollination and the parts of a flower. So in celebration of Pollinator Week, I decided that we would go over a little bit about the parts of a flower and how that involves pollination and why that's so important. So here we have an orange and a yellow lily. So these are about the only couple of flowers that I have outside of my house this year because we had a late Mother's Day frost, and then what the frost didn't kill, the deer pretty much demolished. So I do have a couple of flowers, and they're also great demonstrations because they're nice and big, and they're able to show the parts of the flower very well. So to get started, to go over the parts of a flower, so of course the flower has male and female parts. So here we have the stigma right here. This is this little part in the middle, and that's where all of that sticky nectar is going to be. And then here we have these little yellow covered long kind of skinny pieces. These are called the anther, and that's where the pollen actually is. So the pollen is all of this yellow stuff. You can see it on the Q-tip that you see. So, and then of course we've got our petals here, all right, and that's what's actually going to attract the butterfly or the bee, is these bright colors, because that's what they're attracted to. And with these, or like black-eyed Susans, if you were to put them under a black light or UV light, it actually has these really dark lines that you'd be able to see. And that's actually what the bee sees, is those dark lines, and it's actually drawing it to the middle of the flower so it knows where to go. So something, you know, like a bee or a butterfly that needs a lot of landing space, these types of flowers are great. A hummingbird obviously wouldn't need a landing space. They're looking for more like pitcher style flowers that they can just fly around and stick their long beak and tongue in to get the nectar that way. So different flowers are designed obviously for different types of pollinators. So again, we've got our petal here. Again, the anther, which is attached by this filament, which is just this long piece here, which attaches it down to the base. We have our stigma, again, which is this piece here in the middle. And actually right here, the leaves had fallen, the petals had fallen off of this flower, so it's a little bit easier to see the stigma there. All right, attached down by the style, and then it goes all the way down into the ovary. All right, so this is kind of like the female part of the flower, and then around here on the outside is the male part of the flower. So you can easily take, actually, and I actually went ahead and kind of dissected and split it apart a little bit, so you can kind of, I'm not sure if you're able to see very well, but here in our ovary, if I can get focused in on the camera there, you should be able to see little teeny tiny of the eggs, all right, or the ovules. So that's actually what the inside of this will look like. So to act as a pollinator, in this instance we're going to be a bee, you can take just a regular Q-tip. You could also even take your finger just as well. And we're going to go kind of from flower to flower and pollinate. A fun little craft that you can add into this is actually making a little bee or a butterfly. So I just used construction paper and I made a little bee here, and I attached it just with tape and stuck the Q-tip. So here we have our little bee pollinator. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually pollinate this flower. So as the bee, I'm coming, and you can see how, even though I'm a ginormous bee, which I hope to never see a bee this big in my life, but I would land on the flower here, all right, and then I take the end of the Q-tip and I'm brushing along, acting like these are my legs, because as we know, that is where the bee, or the pollen attaches, is on the bee's legs. As they're kind of moving around, they kind of gather them on their back legs. And then we can also kind of act like this is our tongue, and take it here and kind of go from flower to flower And then I can even go ahead and transfer onto the next flower. Now, as you notice, on the yellow flower, it actually has the yellow pollen, where on the orange flower, it has orange pollen. So you're able to really see the transfer of the two different pollens. And then if you can see on the end of my Q-tip, you can tell the difference between the yellow and the orange. And then you should also be able to see the pollen on my bee's legs. So you can just go around from flower to flower and kind of play around with your pollen. And then of course, if you maybe have a greenhouse and you need to do some pollination on your own, it's the same concept. And it's a really fun activity to do with kids of all ages. And you can kind of get a sense of how it feels to actually be a bee. So I encourage everybody to go out, check the flowers that are around you, compare the differences between the flowers, because a flower like a lily is not going to look the same as, say, the flower of, let me go ahead and pick this. This is a white clover flower. You can tell that it looks very, very different, but the bees love them, you know, just the same. So go ahead, go out and get some adventure.